Alfonso's here, the godfather of the game. Many years of wisdom, remember his name. Speakers on stage, they'll drop the keys. Unlock your power and seize the breeze.
I just want to make sure that everybody takes advantage of this.
Yes.
This is a super panel. This is a super panel, and we have two key people from Alberta here as well.
Yeah.
So Edmonton and Calgary. I don't know how the conversation is going to happen.
Microphone
So we have two mics, and I just want to let you know that Natasha will have to excuse her. You have a plane to catch.
I do. I gotta leave at 5. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So if you have questions for Natasha, get them in now because she'll have to excuse herself.
Okay, so we got some microphone questions. Why don't we start right there?
So the first question I have, first of all, hi Jacob. First question I have is, what are the benefits and disadvantages of getting a REIT over, say, investing in a property on its own?
Of investing in a REIT?
I didn't quite, the advantage of,
Using a REIT as opposed to just investing on a property on your own.
okay, got it. Okay, understood. So he's asking what is the advantages of investing in a REIT versus a do-it-yourself on your own kind of thing. Well, Natasha, that's a good one for you to start.
Yeah.
Also, the disadvantages? Sure, okay.
So first, let's do the advantages. It allows you to diversify into other sectors or regions or timelines that maybe you're not already in. So that's a big one. You don't need to qualify for the debt in that case as well. You're just investing. The third really big advantage often is that you can use registered funds. So that's one challenge we have is we can't use our registered funds for our own properties, but you can use them to invest in something like a REIT. One disadvantage I would say is the liquidity risk in that your money might be tied up when you need to access it, or there could be a delay getting it out. And then I would say the other disadvantage is that you're not in control. You're investing in the strategy or company, and if you like to be in control, you like to be in charge of everything, that might not be something that is super comfortable for you.
Fantastic. Who wants to take one? Alfonso?
I just speak to the differences between private equity and public REITs. I would say the public REIT kind of follows the money market versus a private REIT. You're investing for the long haul, and it doesn't have the fluctuation, the market volatility like the public REITs.
Beautiful. Victor or Norm?
One thing I was going to say, and I was actually going to ask the gentleman a question, is if you're looking for like the hands-on experience and, essentially taking yourself to school through that practical experience, I would say, what's most valuable to you? Do you want the hands-on, or do you like the idea of a little bit more hands-off?
Obviously, I think hands-on would be better.
Hands-on? If you're using it for a learning experience, you could definitely, to Natasha's point, it's a good opportunity to diversify. But if you're looking for hands-on, looking at engaging in a property, going from the experience of like finding it, negotiating, due diligence, is going to give you a lot of that knowledge that you can use forward and teach others in the future. But I think with investors, we can't be rigid. I started off doing BRRRRs, and then I went to turnkey, and now I'm doing private lending. We have to be able to be fluid in our investing, because life's going to hand you cards that you don't always anticipate. Why you come to conferences is it allows you to pivot when you need to, and you don't always get to choose what happens to you in life, but you can choose what the hell you do about it. And so life got crazier for me. I switched my investing and it served me great. So I would say it might work the same for you.
I would say the biggest differences are in the risk and the reward. If you're going to go the REIT fashion, the risk is much lower. You're probably going to get top-notch management of some sort, and returns are going to be in the high single-digit or low double-digit returns. If you're doing it on your own, well, it depends how good you are. I would say mid double-digit returns and even triple-digit returns are not uncommon, but you're going to have to create them. It's going to take some creativity or just plain hard work. You can force a lot more appreciation. So your returns are much higher. If you're going to go into real estate full-time as a business, you don't want to be just passively investing in a REIT. On the other hand, if you don't want to spend all your time building a business with the associated risks, and you're happy getting, 9, 12, 14% returns or whatever they happen to be, a REIT is a way to go. Less risk, less reward. In business, more risk, potentially higher reward.
So Jacob, when I heard your question, I wasn't sure if you were asking whether you wanted to invest in a REIT or create a REIT structure to hold the investment for your own project, because that's a different take. What was your question? Like, would you form a REIT versus a special purpose entity?
No, my question was more just generalized investing in.
Investing in, okay, cool. Yeah.
The only thing I would expand maybe on all of that is it can be both. That's ultimately it. Sometimes we build portfolios, we get to a point where we're okay with the DIY, that portfolio we built, but we have cash. Maybe we don't qualify for a mortgage, but you can then take that capital, put it to work. And if you're still a big fan of real estate, and if you like the REIT that you're looking at, then of course you can expand and still be in the real estate game without having to go qualify for a mortgage and do all the things you need to do on the hands-on scenario. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, let's go over there.
I just have a quick question. I'm looking for what event would have changed your metric when you invested. When you started out, like most of us, we started out with singles, duplexes, what event did you experience that took you from success but to ultra success? What could you identify that took you that big step?
For me, early on in my career, I wasted a lot of time with the wrong people. And so it was the difficult recognition that I was working with the wrong people. And it was only when I met the right people and formed the right team that everything changed. Because a good deal badly managed is no deal. So the key word in that sentence is management. It's not about the deal. It never is. It's about the quality of the people, the quality of the team. And that's true in any business, not just real estate. So that was the thing that flipped the switch for me.
Good.
I think what got me into real estate, I'd read about it, and I had it in the back of my mind that one of these days I should go into the real estate business. But I was running a data processing company that I started when I was like 24 years old, and it was like full-time, eking out a living. Friend of mine lost his job, came to me for advice, and he said he didn't want another job because he got downsized, and he says, Norm, you work for yourself. You're the last guy that gets downsized. So I suggested real estate, asked me if I knew anything about it. I said I read a couple of books, but I had an idea. Read the books, go out and make a deal. You're getting unemployment for 6 months. If you don't make a deal in 6 months, you're not cut out for being in business for yourself, get a job. And 5.5 months in, when he hadn't done anything, like he'd read the books, but he couldn't seem to close on a deal, and we were not like 19 anymore. This was serious. He was married, 2 kids, mortgage, running out of unemployment insurance. I felt obliged to help him. And I don't understand why this works, but every time I tried to make a lot of money in business for myself, I struggled and I didn't do that well. Whenever I was motivated to help a friend, it was unbelievable the returns we got. Our first building, our first building was a 36-unit apartment building, made a few million and retired. And then another friend came to me after 5 years of me just having fun. And I said, okay, I'm going to come out of retirement. I thought we would do maybe 100 units, and I ended up doing 1,000. I don't know how. It just...
In respect to your question, was there like a singular event? From my experience, I would say just getting out and coming to these events is a first step. I feel like with your investment journey, you're going to have a series of problems that are going to come up. And when you come to these events, it is going to give you opportunities for solutions. Sometimes your life is going to feel like a scattered puzzle. And then when you leave events like this, it's probably going to feel like a scattered puzzle. Wait a couple days and you'll start to get clarity and the pieces will start to fit together for you. But it's an ongoing thing. I can't say it's one thing. One thing that might have helped me was RAIN, actually, was my very first real estate conference I've ever been to. Has anybody ever been to a previous RAIN conference? Yeah, right? And so I would say it showed me what was possible, and that's when I started my journey. But I continue to come to great events like Expand because it keeps me going and it helps me solve continuous problems that tend to come up. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. Well, that was because he said, there's something he said that was very important. He said, from success to ultra success. So you guys already know my story of how I got here, but how did I go that extra? How did I take that next leap? And for me, it was, I think maybe 10 years ago. Helene loves doing renovations. I mean, she loves it. She's in there. We were doing a lot of value add, buying buildings, doing value add, refining them in like a year, right? Pulling the money, going to the next one, go to the next one. And one day, so there was a building just about, let's say about two hours from here. And maybe more, I'm not sure, but 2 hours, let's say. And she called, I was like, hey, hon, you coming home? She's like, no, I'm staying here. I'm like, what do you mean you're staying there? Well, some supplies or something were coming in the morning. She didn't want to go back home and come back. She's like, I'm just going to have a blow-up mat or whatever, and I'm going to sleep here in the unit. And I started to think, I'm like, hon, I think we're doing this wrong. Like, I don't think it's supposed to be like this. And I realized that we were the business. And without us, the business didn't grow, Like, we were the business. And so this is when I started to work on the business. And the second I started working on the business, this is where I went from success to ultra success.
I would say for me, the rain room, for sure. I remember a specific meeting that we were at, and they were talking about joint ventures and raising capital, and my mind was actually blown. I was like, I didn't even know this was a possibility. And that really changed how I thought about things, but also what I think I've unlocked the older I get, the more hats I wear, is when I am having fun while I'm working, while I'm enjoying what I'm doing, the results are so much better. And so I really try to focus on things and do tasks that I enjoy, and it just seems to always end up in a much better result. So those are the two things that I would say.
Fantastic.
So I guess my question is around the over-leverage. What are signs that you're over-leveraged, could potentially become over-leveraged, and what action steps would you take to prevent that from happening or fixing that course?
Sorry.
Over leverage.
So how do you
How do you
fix
know
it?
how do you gauge whether you're over leveraged or not?
Well, I'm assuming we're talking about a multifamily asset or something along those lines. Just because you can push the limits doesn't mean you should. I think you're at risk of getting over leveraged when a few little things in the market shift and you're underwater. And so I think watching that debt, just because you can finance something up to X, should you do that? Is the market in a declining, sector, or is it inclining? If you're in that declining sector, maybe leave yourself some room. Don't push the debt right to the limits, for example, and it's like have some cushion for yourself. Being in the Alberta market, we've seen this a lot, and you have to plan for those shifts and be prepared for what that might mean down the road.
Warren Buffett, he's got a great quote. When the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. And so, yeah, that's a good question that you have. You always want to leave equity in the deal. I believe in overcapitalizing. So the difference between borrowing the money to do a deal versus going out there and working with other partners and sharing in equity is going to be the difference between how long you last in the business. Because the person that wants to have 100% of the equity, but then you have to leverage the money to get into it. The second something goes wrong, the market shifts, interest rates or whatever, that person can't weather the storm. And so borrowing money is the easy way of raising capital. Building relationships, working with other people. There's a skill set that has to be developed, and it takes effort, right? But that makes it so you can weather the storm, because if you, for whatever reason, something goes wrong and you have to go back and talk to your partners and say, hey, the boiler went, we're going to have to pause distributions to build up the reserve again. Everybody's going to be flexible because they understand. They are also owners themselves. And the idea is you do the best thing for the asset, right? Not for the people involved. Someone that lends you money, doesn't matter what happens, they want their money. And so this is how I look at it.
And I love the question too, because I find a lot of mitigation isn't really discussed at the level that it should. And so the biggest thing that I'd be looking for is for you right now, my suggestion is taking an inventory of what your assets are doing. Are you in a negative on some of your properties? Do you have enough cash flow of others to be able to, how much cash flow are you generating from your job? Also, are you building in, before you get into your next investment, take an inventory of what you have, but not just in the sense of numbers. Look at what kind of capital expenditures that might come up in the 5 or 10 years. And what if somebody told you that boiler was going to last 10, but it lasts 1? Do you have enough capital to replace that? Or do you need to get another JV partner in? Are you going to be forced to sell? What does that look like? So I would say anytime you look at adding an asset, do an inventory of what you currently have, how much capital you have in the bank, and always prepare for worst case scenario. When you're running pro formas, make sure that you're extremely conservative. Always account for a vacancy, always account for maintenance. And again, just know that the worst things can happen and they can happen fast. And so just, I feel like you're going to be good just from asking this question. So, yeah.
The answer to that question when you're bigger is easy. It's just numbers. When I do a refi, I might pull out 80, 85% on a building, but I want my overall loan to value from all my properties combined to be in the 65 or less % range so that I'm always comfortable. The difficult part is when you're starting out and you might only have one building. My mentor taught me at that time, go for lower middle class buildings. You see, he explained there's more poor people out there than rich people. And no matter what happens in the economy, people got to live somewhere, and they're going to migrate to the lower cost apartments. Now, to put some numbers in today's deals, in the Montreal area, new construction, they got to sell at over $2,000 a month. They put up a new building. In order to make the financing and everything work, they need $2,000, $2,200, $2,500 a month. An average two-bedroom in Montreal is $1,500, $1,800, okay? I would look on a first deal to buy apartments that would be properly priced in the $1,200 to $1,500 range, because no matter what happens in the economy, somebody's going to want those apartments. You're not going to suffer from vacancy. When you have high-end apartments, or a big mistake in a tough economy is people buy a building, over-renovate them, they need to rent them for $1,900, $2,000, and they just can't rent them out, or they rent them out eventually after 3-4 months empty. That's tough if it's your only building. If you have a lot of units, okay, so it averages out. But when you're starting out, go for lower middle class apartments, not slums, but blue-collar worker types, people who have jobs that can afford the rent. When you're bigger, then it's a portfolio thing. I use 65%. I don't know if that's ideal. Could be 70, could be 60. Don't over leverage. You could over leverage one building. I'll try to squeeze the most I can out of a refi. But I've also got 7, 8, 9 other buildings that are averaging it down because some are only at 30%, 40%. So I never want to go over 65% total. But when you're starting out, you got to be careful, and you want to have apartments that are going to be in high demand. And the cheaper apartments are always in big demand.
There's another dimension to your question that I think is equally important. There's leverage, and when we talk about the capital stack, we're talking about a loan and equity. That's the simplest capital stack. But in reality, most capital structures are more complicated than that. So you may have a loan, you may have an additional loan, maybe you'll have preferred equity. There may be more layers. So you want to pay attention not just to the leverage, but to the terms associated with each of the different share classes in the project, because that will add complexity. It may wipe out the equity investors, depending on how it's structured. So it's not just about leverage, it's also about figuring out what your cost of capital is overall, what's going to give you the best cost of capital, and how you structure it.
I would add to it a couple of things. When you're talking about when you start to think about if you're over leveraged, first we have to consider, think about what went on in Toronto condo market. Through a boom cycle, everybody's over leveraged. Interest rates are low, there's lots of momentum, there's lots of deals churning, and it all works in that kind of scenario, in that particular kind of a cycle, but nobody was prepared for when the slump cycle hits. So if you go through periods of time where you can kind of risk in the right cycle, you can be a little over leveraged, knowing that you're going to take advantage of that cycle to prepare for the eventual shift in the cycle. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is where are you investing? If you're in a one-horse town, just do not over leverage ever. You're going to go in at that 65%, 70% loan to value. Those are you have to play it safe given whatever regional area you happen to be in and what's driving that particular housing market. So those are a couple of things to consider in that. So you can go through periods where you're feeling a little over leveraged, but you've got the economy to support it, the market to support it, and then you've got to get it back, bring your loan to value down as you go through the next cycle of the market, prepare for your next deal.
I have to add one more thing. It's been 40 years since I started, and I forgot something. When I started out, now I have money, so I don't worry about cash flow and that. I've got working capital. When I started, and I don't hear people talk about this enough, if I needed, let's say, $100,000 to do a deal, or $150,000 to do a deal, I always wanted to have 3 months extra working capital as a buffer. When you've only got one deal, you don't want to go underwater because a hot water heater broke. So let's say if the monthly rent was $10,000, I needed $30,000 additional working capital day one as a buffer to ensure survival. Less important when you're bigger and you have more units. But when you're starting out, and I don't hear people talk about that, working capital is very important.
100%.
When you're starting out anyways.
I want to go back to one question about success, just really quickly. I wasn't going to say anything, and I just want to add to it. The question about next levels of success. I think we need to be very cautious, all of you, in terms of, after 10 years of interviews on my podcast of seemingly ordinary individuals called everyday millionaires, I quit asking the question is how do you define success? I quit asking the question because very few people have it. I think the most important part of that question that was asked about success is what is your definition of success? Is it dollars? Is it lifestyle? Is it family? What is your definition of success? The best definition I happened to randomly ask a guest one day for some reason. I said, how do you define success? And he said, when I wake up in the morning and I take a minute to take a breath, I ask myself the question, am I living the vision I have for my life? If I am, then I am being successful. He's got no attachment to money at all. He's got a garage full of high exotic cars and lives the life that many would aspire to live. He doesn't measure his success that way. Am I living my vision? So I would only encourage you, do not compare yourself to anybody here or anywhere else. Define what success is for you, and it may or may not be about millions of dollars. And if it's not, that's okay. That's it. So that would be my guidance around that question, by the way. I just didn't want to step over it after all. Okay, we go to this side of the room.
In your opinion, what immediately makes someone stand out as a valuable partner?
As a valuable partner? Okay. So in every business, there's 7 complementary skills that you need, not just one. And all of these different roles matter. Now, you might be thinking, I'm just one person. I haven't figured out how to feed one family. And Victor, you're telling me I need to feed 7. How the heck am I going to do that? Well, as it turns out, if you think you're going to grow organically from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, you're going to get caught in a low Earth orbit that you will never escape. You will not get escape velocity. It is actually easier to go bigger. And the key is to get those complementary skills against the breadth of everything that's required in a business. They don't all have to be full-time. But if you're trying to do it all yourself or with 2 people, you won't have the skills, and if you did, there wouldn't be enough hours in a lifetime to get it done. So it's figuring out what the makeup of that core team needs to be, which ones need to be outsourced as consultants, but you need all of those core skills. A few of them can be partners, and that comes down to chemistry and values.
Great. Let's keep on going.
I don't have a lot of good advice on how to size up partners, but I'll tell you this. Every building I ever bought, I had partners. And the reason is I can't be everywhere at one time. And maybe I'd like to take a vacation once in a while. So I'm looking for people, if anything, I gotta like the person and they gotta be competent. You know, how do I determine that? I don't know. I like who I like, and competence is obvious.
And just to kind of spin up what Norm shared is, you know, you're looking for somebody with complementary skills. That's always got to be somewhere in what value somebody brings. Complementary skills. You don't need what you do. You need something that you don't do that somebody else is an expert at. Go ahead, Calvin.
And yeah, so it's taking a look at yourself in the mirror and asking yourself, what do I like to do, to Natasha's point, and what am I good at? What am I not good at? And what's preventing me to getting to the level that I want to achieve? And when you come to an event like this, and you're a great networker, we've talked lots, getting out there and having as many conversations, and once you find a couple people, just put an asterisk next to their name. Make sure you prioritize the conversation this week, get a hold of them, go for coffee or do a Zoom, and see if it's a good fit. But I think it's important to be real with yourself and not force yourself to be something that you're not, if that makes sense. Because a lot of us do that. We expect that we're going to be good at everything. Fact is, I suck at most things. I'm just good at maybe 5% of the things, and I focus on those, and I hire out everything else. And just know that partners will come and go, and that's completely natural as well. Your team will change, it'll evolve as you evolve as well.
I build relationships. How do I figure out if that person's right for me? It's, you know, it takes time. You spend the time together, you figure out whether you have core value, shared values, common goals, and if the other side is transactional, I'll know that right away, and it's going to turn me off. So it's got to be a genuine connection. And I've taken money from people that I shouldn't have taken money from in my career, and every single time my gut told me no, and I did it, and I regretted it every single time. And so I learned over time. I've been doing this for 26 years. So over time, it's like, hey, let's walk, let's have a coffee, let's get on a Zoom, you know, let's go on a vacation together. Let's see if we can do this long term. And you know, all the partnerships that I've had after understanding that have flourished. I mean, where's Dr. Cola and Dr. Rebecca over here? I thought they were. I saw them. Oh, yes. So we did about $60 million in deals together. I mean, you don't just wake up one day and say, we're going to do this. But it was about a year and a half of us just getting to know one another that we just said, hey, let's do this, right? So it takes time. Don't be in a rush. Build relationships.
I agree with everything that was said. But the other thing that I look for now is the energy for it. Like, don't want to be dragging bodies behind you, you know? That's no fun for anyone. And how you can read that is like, you know, just even basic things of how people communicate. Are they, you know, energetic about what you're doing, or are you having to drag them along like that? Because that is only going to get worse and worse, and kind of, you know, partnership that you might regret. So that's what I look for right away.
Great. Okay, we got time for another one. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Eleni, and my question for you today is, in your investing journey, what was the biggest lesson you've learned? And from that, what is the one piece of advice you would give someone who's not as experienced as you or just starting out?
The best piece of advice I can get or would give if you're new, is to make sure that you are aligning whatever strategy you want to implement with what the market is doing. The largest mistakes I have seen is when someone's trying to force the strategy into the market and it doesn't make sense. So, you know, flipping properties in a market that's crashing, or trying to do a burr on a market that's coming down. Those are just a couple examples. So that would be the best advice I can give anyone. And what was the first part? Sorry.
What was the biggest lesson you learned in your journey?
The biggest lesson I actually learned is what you just said. Is I have one example of taking money from somebody I shouldn't have, and it felt off and it felt wrong, and I didn't listen to my gut. So listen to your gut always. And also ask questions. Ask a lot of questions and be curious about what other people are up to, and you'll learn a whole lot. And this community is so helpful. So, yeah.
I have so many lessons. I have so many, and I see the time. We got 2 minutes, so I'm just going to be very brief. The worst time to sell a property is when you have to. So never buy real estate that you may have to sell at some point. And so everything I buy is because I know I'm going to keep forever if I had to.
I'm going to say two things. Biggest lesson I've learned is that when I didn't trust my gut, I got into an investment that I regretted, and the time and energy and money that I lost from it wasn't worth it. So sometimes not taking any action at all is the best action that you can take. That's the first part. And as a new investor, it's easy to put people on a pedestal. Don't do that. Don't put anybody on a pedestal. I think it's good to be able to absorb what they have to offer and collect it. But I think it's important to always ask the questions. Never feel like you can't ask something because you're novice. This is your journey and it's about you, it's not about them. And so you have to take the time to learn it. And if you don't feel right about something because you partner with somebody that's an expert, sometimes that relationship just doesn't make sense. And maybe it is transactional for them, and you might get yourself in a terrible situation. So just be kind to your journey and yourself along the way.
Okay, you asked a two-part question, and frankly, I didn't hear the second part clearly.
That's okay. The one was, what's the biggest lesson you learned from your journey? And from that, what is the one piece of advice that you would give people who are not as experienced as you are just starting out?
The one piece of advice that I would give on
For people just starting out.
In general.
just starting out. Well, it's like I said, number one, figure out upfront how you're going to hold on financially. And then I realized I gave it another point was when you're doing the numbers, take into account working capital and how you're going to deal with it psychologically. And what I did is I read a lot of books on real estate. In fact, there used to be a magazine, a monthly magazine called Financial Freedom Report, which, you know, it was a 64-page magazine, so it wasn't gigantic, but by learning a little bit every month, by the time I actually did my first deal, I kind of knew a lot about real estate, just from having read about it for 7-8 years. So it was the learning thing. But have working capital. The number one reason people go out of business is lack of working capital. Okay, and if you wanted a rule of thumb, 3 months rent. You know, I sometimes go lower now because 1 month's rent is $500,000. So I figure if I have $1 million in the hopper, 2 months rent is plenty of working capital. But it's not all one building, because not every building will have a problem at the same time. So you could go lower, but when you start out, you need 3 months working capital to have breathing room. and figure out those two things. How will you hold on financially? How will you hold on psychologically? And the biggest thing I learned over the years that made me the most amount of money is this buy and hold thing. Like, my exit strategy is called death, okay? And even then, I plan on passing it on to the family. You know, there's reasons over the years I sold properties, but they weren't because I planned to sell them after 2-3 years. The plan is always forever.
Put up your hand if you've ever experienced stress. I'm going to give you a definition of stress that's not a dictionary definition, it's just mine. And stress is the gap, you might want to write this down. Stress is the gap between expectation and reality. It's in that gap that stress lives. If there is no gap, there is no stress. So there's only two variables, expectation and reality. Oftentimes, people try and change the reality, and maybe you can by 1 or 2%. But the other variable, which is the one that you have far more control over, is expectation. And so that's how you can reduce stress, is by closing that gap.
We are out of time, ladies and gentlemen, and just when you think about it, so nice round of applause for our panel.
What's going on, guys? And welcome to our 9th edition of our Expand Investor Conference. And I can't believe it. It's been 9 conferences that we have done. I'm so grateful and I'm thankful to you. There's people in this room right now that have come to all 9 Expand Investor Conferences. And so thank you for coming to this 9th Investor Conference, which is an important one because it's right here in the nation's capital. The last Expand in Mississauga, number 8, was amazing. The vendors, we had a lot of vendors, and vendors have been increasing over the last couple of years because we've become the number 1 real estate investor conference in the nation. Not only going across Canada, but also across the US as well. And so don't be surprised that at some point at our Expand Investor Conference, we do it in the US. But number 8 was incredible. Just under 600 people. The vibe was great, and we had an amazing time, which brings me to now, which is our 9th Investor Conference here in the nation's capital. And so the first 3 were in Niagara Falls. Then we were in Toronto for 3 expands in the Western Harbor Castle. Then we went all the way out west to Edmonton, and it was an amazing event. Then we came back to Mississauga for number 8, and now for our 10th, which, you know what? The 10th expand, 10 expands, that means that we're gonna do it big. And because we're gonna do it big, we're gonna go out west for the next expand in November. We are going to Calgary, baby. We're going to Calgary. So get your cowboy hats. Yeah, we are going to Calgary, and we're looking forward to that. So the next expand in November, we're going to Calgary. And what we're gonna be doing is we have advanced ticket sales going on right now during this expand. So you want to get your tickets, and we will see you at the next expand. Enjoy this expand, my friends, and we will see you in Calgary in November.